George toured the tour facility last December, came back. We met on New Year's Eve in Great Barrington, and he gave me a list of 13 companies that were being spawned out of Tour's work. And you heard about all the work that was going on. But I looked at George and I said, we've got our work cut out for the next decade, at least, right? This reminded me, I was on Wall Street managing money when the PC popped up. Carver Mead was doing all this great work, Federico Fagin. And then we went through the dot-coms and the telecosm and all that. We've got a new cosm. And I believe that this cosm is going to produce superabundance like we've never seen before. And we're going to hear about all the great superabundance things today. And there's George. Good morning, George. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give you a microcosm of the nanocosm. We've got 3 emerging superstars of the nanocosm. We could have a whole day on this topic. There's 13 companies that are currently being formed or have been formed or in formation. We're gonna talk about 3 of them today. 2 of them are associated with the Tour inventions at Rice University, and so we've got Chris Harrison, no relation to George, but Chris is a fellow from Connecticut who's going to talk to us about some of the incredible alchemy work that's going on in energy and the technology there. And we're going to follow up with John Van Leeuwen of Universal Matter. And Universal Matter, I co-founded the Graphene Stakeholders Association in 2012. George spoke at our 2014 event in San Francisco. And I had always envisioned graphene being the wonder material that it is. But the problem was we couldn't produce it. We couldn't produce the real thing cheaply, inexpensively, what we can today for the first time because of the work that was done at Rice University. And John's company, Universal Matter, is going to be, in my estimation, the first true graphene superstar in the world economy. And there's no mining. We can take ordinary trash and convert it to turbostratic graphene. Just phenomenal. And then we're going to follow John up with a great presentation from a company called Nanorobotics out of Israel. Shlomo came all the way over from Israel, bless him. And he's going to talk to us about a new technology that was developed at Rice that's going to eradicate cancer. And I'm a former cancer survivor, so this cuts close to home. Or I am a cancer survivor, not a former cancer survivor. Feels like a former cancer survivor. But this technology is Arthur C. Clarke once said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. This looks like real magic to me. And it's so exciting. And all 3 of these companies are building out their capital structures. The investment opportunities are phenomenal for the aspiring venture investors out there. So I'm really delighted today that George asked me to be here and present in front of you and be able to have these 3 companies. So I'd like to kick off with Chris. And we're going to talk about C-Tech and all the really phenomenal things that are going on with this energy alchemy, 21st century alchemy. It turns out that Isaac Newton was an alchemist. I've been doing a lot of reading. George and I have talked about this, but John Maynard Keynes actually bought those papers from Newton's library, and he has some phenomenal things to say, and hopefully we're going to be talking about this in a book down the road. But what Chris is doing with converting waste to energy is phenomenal. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Steve. It actually works. Is George here? George, thank you for inviting me. I want to say before I start, there'll be some comments I make which you might think are greenwashing. I'm not greenwashing. There just happen to be some extra things that occur with the technology that people are really excited about, but that wasn't why it was developed. So I just wanted to give you the heads up. So please don't beat me up for that. Anyway, we have a very exciting emerging disruptive technology called CTEC. Stands for Clean Thermodynamic Energy Conversion. Company was founded in 2010 in New Haven in East Sussex, England. Mike Burns was the founder. He had been in the automotive business as an engineer for over 30 years, and at Ricardo Corporation and some other companies as well. And he was the chief engineer at Daewoo Motor Corporation as well. During his time in the automotive business, he observed with a lot of his colleagues that there was an incredible amount of excess heat that was coming off engines and going into the atmosphere. And everybody was looking at it as a problem or as a cost. And he thought it was a financial opportunity. So they spent, the company's been around for 12 years now. But for the first 6 years, they did an incredible amount of research and development, patenting, everything. And for the last 6 years, we now have plants deployed in England, France, and Germany. And what we do is we destroy waste. It doesn't matter what kind of waste it is, as long as it lived in a previous life. So obviously metal will not work, but steel and things like that. But municipal solid waste will work, medical waste, chemical waste, hazardous waste. You could put tires in, plastic, cardboard, fog, which is the fats, oils, and greases. You could put oil in there. You could actually put coal in and burn coal. You could actually create electricity with coal and not have emissions with this. So we take the waste down to 4% of its original body weight into a fine ash. The fine ash is completely clean, disinfected, no negative environmental impact. The ash can be used as filler in cement products and in road products. You can give it away, you can sell it, or in a worst case scenario, you can send it to an ash dump. But it will be significantly less on your transportation and disposal costs because the weight is going to be so much less. On top of it, the plant, the footprint of the plant is 100 feet long, 30 feet wide, 20 feet high. So it can scale as a technology because it could be put in a lot of different places. We are, just off the top of my head, I could probably think of a couple of dozen markets that we could go after. Hospitals, high-rise residential, high-rise commercial, hotels, casinos, university campuses.
Elon Musk's battery facility?
Exactly. I've got communication out to him on that. Food processing, retail distribution, wastewater treatment, it goes on and on. You basically just use your imagination and you can find a place to use this. The beautiful thing about it is that our waste product is clean energy. So while we're destroying the waste, we're actually using pyrolysis and gasification technology to do this. And it's used, for over 100 years, this technology, in a lot of different places. We have a specific application. So the green energy that we create is thermal, electricity, and we can do hydrogen. We're not doing it yet right now because there is a problem with the supply chain. There are two parts that we need to bolt in between stages 2 and 3 in the plant, and we can produce hydrogen. And it's 96 weeks back ordered right now, so we can't do that. But 2 years from now, we'll be doing hydrogen. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the success stories. There's a hospital called New Haven Hospital outside of London. We've had a plant there now for over 6 years. They've ordered a second one because they're going to expand. We're doing roughly between 12 and 18 tons of waste a day, including all of their medical waste. The plant, by the way, can run a minimum of 340 days a year, 24/7. The bottom line is it's probably going to run 360 days or 363 days a year. It's not going to be down 2 days a month. It's going to probably be down 2 or 3 days a year. We have a very aggressive maintenance schedule that we monitor. We have 145 sensors in each plant, and we're monitoring that 24/7. So we know all the activity that's going on. We can see if a part's wearing down, so on. So New Haven is getting rid of all of their waste. They're not pulling from the grid. Their emissions are almost zero from this process. and they've gotten rid of all their transportation and disposal costs associated with getting rid of waste. I was in the waste business for 6 years, and it's, for this country, it's becoming more and more of a problem. I spent time over in Europe about 30 years ago, and I was amazed at how much they knew where every piece of garbage went back then. But, they didn't have the land that we have. So currently, I live in Hartford, Connecticut, actually Hartford County. I'm in Farmington. We just signed a contract for our county to send 800,000 tons of municipal solid waste out of the state for the next 5 years by rail or by truck to Alabama, West Virginia, and Ohio, because we don't have a place to put it or incinerate it. It's crazy. So the EPA keeps on making it difficult to get rid of it. So now they have no other place to do it but send it out. We're going to spend a fortune doing it as well. So garbage is a big problem. Energy is a big problem. There's plenty of garbage. In the United States, the average American throws out about 4.9 pounds of garbage a day. Times that by 338 million people, and that's just municipal solid waste. That's not all the other stuff I was mentioning. So there's plenty of garbage to actually do this and save money. And then on the electricity, so actually the hospital is creating enough thermal to heat and cool the hospital annually from this process. And that's about 20 gigawatt hours of thermal annually that they're pulling out of this. And on the electricity, they're putting out about 2.8 gigawatt hours annually of electricity that they're selling to a port in their town to help power the port. So the company was really developed to tackle that problem I mentioned right up front, and then also to really reduce costs for businesses. So this is a tremendous opportunity to absolutely get rid of the waste problem and create energy as you do it. And
so what would be the typical payback if you approached a company with this, with your solution, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Tell them there's a great opportunity to turn their facility into basically self-sufficient energy using their waste. What kind of payback are we talking about, and how long?
Okay, for the size that I just mentioned, the 100 by 30 by 20, that's really for most everything. Probably between 3 and 4 years is a very, we have this thing paid back. Now, hospitals can pay back quicker because the waste, the BTU value in medical waste, because there's so much plastic, is higher. So we see maybe a year and a half or 2 years, 2.5 years, a hospital pays back. I have a wastewater treatment plant that I'm talking to in Hartford, Connecticut, Metropolitan District Commission. They're a municipal trust founded about 100 years ago. They handle all the wastewater, medical, sludge, chemical waste, hazardous waste for Hartford and all the surrounding suburbs. They currently have 3 multi-hearth incinerators. 2 of them are going 24/7, 365, and they're burning 5 tons of sludge an hour. They're putting out incredible emissions. So there's been all sorts of articles in the Hartford Current about, environmental justice, because Hartford and East Hartford are getting the bulk of it all, and they're less affluent neighborhoods and so on. So the waste, depending on the BTU value, is going to really determine how quickly we can pay back. So the higher the BTU value, the better it is. Now, on this wastewater treatment plant, we came up with a new size because the 5 tons coming in, we had to figure out something. So we actually bolted 2 plants together and added 2 stages to it. And so what's going to happen on that one, it's going to be like 150 by 150, but that's not going to be the norm. It's just because they have such volume there. And we figured out that we can get rid of their $9 million a year electric bill, their $1 million a year gas bill, take their emissions down to 0, destroy the PFAS chemical that's in the sludge, which is a big problem for a lot of people. Do that, create the thermal that we'll be creating will be used in the second stage that we added. So what will happen is the water and the waste sludge will go in at 78% wet, 22% dry, and in the second stage, we're going to have a dryer there. We're going to use all the thermal that we're creating to dry that sludge, and we'll take it down to 90% solid, 10% water, and then we go through the rest of the process doing other things.
I was, okay, we'll take the,
Clarification, is your output constant, intermittent, or on demand for electricity?
I would say, when you say constant, so is there a constant flow of electricity? I could say this, for every hour that the plant operates, we're generating 345 kilowatt hours of electricity. I don't know what it is on the thermal, but I can find that out.
Comparable to wind or turbine or cells. It's there when you need it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
so you had a meeting last night,
Yes.
and you got to talk about the napkin, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you share that?
Before
Go ahead.
I do that, I didn't finish. So we figured out we could actually pay back in 2.6 years on this particular facility, and they would be buying like 4 doubles. So they'd be spending, close to probably $80 million. And in 2 years, 2.6 years, we could pay back. They also have a debt overhang of $23,500,000 that from their multi-hearths. And in the 2 years after we pay ourselves back, we can pay that off for them. So for the next 15, it has a 20-year life. For the next 15 years, it's just all cream.
Okay, we're kind of short on time, but somebody
All right.
validated your technology last
Yes.
night on the napkin. That was fabulous.
Is Rick here? I don't see him. Anyway, Rick? Yes. I saw Rick in a bar, and we were talking, and he was grilling me, and he said, well, I actually just figured out the mathematical equation. You work. So he put it on the back of a napkin.
Thank you, Rick.
I'm sorry? Math checks out. Well,
There we go. It's always good when the math checks out.
I'm not capable of doing that, but I appreciate the fact that you did that.
We've got to end this. Unfortunately,
Okay.
we could talk all day, but we're going to bring up John Van Leeuwen now, and we're going to talk about turbostratic graphene and the phenomenal opportunities. This company is fantastic. It's got a great future, and it's led by a very talented and experienced entrepreneur. So, John, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me and talking about universal matter. So we're an advanced materials company. All right, so before I get into it, I need to tell you guys a little bit about carbon, because not all of you might be familiar with this. And then my slides were animated, but because of the way it's working here, the animation is all gone. So we're just going to see the slides as they are. So carbon, pure carbon, comes in many, many different forms. Right, this is pure carbon. I'm talking about carbohydrates and all these things, but it's pure carbon. So it comes in an amorphous form, which is typically coke, like met coke or pet coke, and charcoal and biochar and those kind of things, and carbon black. And those carbon materials as feedstocks are very low cost. Thinking about $2 a kilogram kind of things. If you go to your left, you have crystalline forms. So that's where graphene fits and graphite. And diamond. So diamond, I had to do this math, but it's $16 million per kilogram for mass. So this is also another form of carbon. And graphene fits in between. So graphene currently sells for between $90 and $750 a kilogram. And it's made from graphite, as Steve already mentioned. Now, this is all going to change. Basically, the reason graphene really hasn't taken off the way everybody expected is it's too expensive, and it's too variable in quantity. So what we have here is we have a new invention. So a new invention made by Rice that can turn amorphous carbon into graphene. And on the right you see Dr. Tour, who spoke here last year, who's one of the top 50 scientists in the world, brilliant man. And the grad student Zui Luong, who's now a senior scientist with us, who invented this process working for Dr. Tour. And so this is what I'm going to talk about today, is this invention to turn this low-cost amorphous carbon into graphene. And that's going to be the breakthrough, I think, that will get the graphene industry really going. And so, talking about superabundance, since that's a theme of the conference, how many of you are familiar with turquoise hydrogen? No hands up. Okay, that's not good. So most hydrogen today is made through steam methane reforming, so it's called gray hydrogen. And it's called gray because it all these carbon, if you start with methane and you strip off the hydrogen, the carbon goes up in the air as carbon dioxide. So it's a horrible polluter. So if you make hydrogen that way, you're offsetting everything you gain from hydrogen with the CO2 you put in the atmosphere. So everybody's now working on blue hydrogen, which is basically doing the same process, except instead of putting it in the air, you put it in the ground. You sequester it. And that has all kinds of issues as well. And then people are now more and more talking about green hydrogen, which is you don't start with methane, you start with water, and through electrolysis, you make hydrogen and oxygen. Turquoise fits in between blue and green. That's why the color is chosen that way. And basically what it is, you start with methane, you strip off the hydrogen, and what you end up is solid carbon. And there are now many, many companies working on this. In fact, the entire oil and gas industry is looking to see if they can make this work. And what we're going to get is mountains upon mountains of carbon black. That's where the superabundance will appear. We are the company that's going to turn that carbon black into graphene. So what is graphene? How many are you familiar with graphene? How many have heard of graphene? Quite a few. Good. So the short of it is, it's the world's strongest material. It won a Nobel Prize in 2010, and that's when the whole new industry started. And it has many, many, many uses. So we make this as a powder, and we can add it to many different industrial materials to improve their mechanical properties. It's an incredible conductor of electricity, of heat. It has incredible strength. The problem really is that it's been too expensive, and it's been too variable to really get into the large markets. So we are solving that. So on the left-hand side, you see the traditional processes. There's a bottoms-up approach that Steve already mentioned, which is CVD, or chemical vapor deposition, where you start with simple carbon blocks and you build them up. That's a very expensive way to make a film of graphene, and we don't do that. And then there's a top-down approach, which almost every other company, about 300 of them around the globe today, they start with graphite, which is mined, and they exfoliate it to make graphene. And that unfortunately doesn't work that well. It makes good graphene, but it's too expensive. So our process, which is called flash joule heating, is shown here on the right. And if I click again, I should have a video of it live to show you. So here's a carbon sample in a tube, in a quartz tube, clamped between two electrodes. And in a matter of seconds, we heat this up using high voltage, high currents to about 3,000 Celsius. So as a reference, that's 3 times the temperature of lava. If you've been to Hawaii and seen lava flow, this is 3 times that temperature. And while you do that, you basically break most carbon bonds and you reorganize them into graphene, into the chicken wire fence looking material that graphene is. This is our process. So we can do this reaction in anything from seconds or milliseconds all the way up to an hour if we need to, depending on the feedstock and depending on what kind of graphene we're trying to make. So this is the invention that was made, which is going to break through. So our vision is to become the leading supplier of high quality and sustainable graphene, because we can do this from carbon waste streams. So we use inexpensive carbon feedstocks, and then by adding them to industrial materials, which I'll talk about next, we can dramatically reduce their use and the associated greenhouse gas emissions. And therefore we can facilitate circular economies. So I'll give you several examples of this. So here's, literally there are hundreds, if not thousands, of applications for graphene. You could add it to many, many different things. They're highlighted here. The ones in red are the ones that we're working on. So we are adding it to cement to make high-strength cement, to asphalt to make high-strength bitumen, to plastic for plastic pipe, coatings, and tires. And I'll talk about all these things in a bit more detail. By the way, the total addressable market, if you sell this at the prices that market needs to have a value proposition, is close to $90 billion. Today in the 5 markets that I will talk about next. So let's start with tires. So automotive tires. So by adding just a small amount of graphene to rubber, we can increase the abrasion resistance by 20-25%. And the amount of energy that's used in making a tire, we can reduce that by 20-40%. And there's no negative impacts on any of the other properties. This market alone is a $5 billion a year market. If you look at the top 10 tire manufacturers, they could buy about $5 billion per year of graphene. On the right here, you see a graph with the tire wear per manufacturer. So Michelin is the best at 90 grams per 1,000 kilometers, and the worst is Pirelli and Nokian on the right. And this is where so basically what happens is if you drive your car, you lose on average 5 pounds of rubber per year. It goes up in the atmosphere or gets onto the road. But it's on a global basis, about 6 million tons of rubber gets worn off and goes into the environment. The trend with electrical vehicles is that they're about 25% heavier than their gasoline counterparts. So that means more tire wear. So if you do the math, and I'll do it on the bottom there, if you add the graphene, you're going to save about $100 per car per year, and it would cost about $40 to put that in. So it's a great value prop for tire manufacturers. So that's the first market that we're going after. And we're in advanced testing with one of the top 5 global players in this industry. The second market is asphalt. So asphalt is basically like concrete. You use bitumen as the cement. You add aggregates and you pave the roads with the asphalt. When you add graphene to it, you can double the life of the road. And this has already been proven in Italy by several companies. If you go to Rome and to Milan, kilometers of road have already been laid down with bitumen that's been enhanced by graphene. And so if you can double the life of the road, of course, there's a great value prop there. And that's about a $6 billion market per year. And basically what you do is you know, especially where I'm from in Canada, with the climate and the weather, you get potholes that are formed in the winter, of course. In the summer, it gets hot, so you get rutting. You're trying to eliminate that by adding the graphene to the bitumen. And we're working with one of the top asphalt manufacturers in the US here on this problem. The third application is protective coatings. So you're all familiar with the Golden Gate Bridge, just south of here. This bridge gets painted every year by a crew of 25 people, end to end. By the time they get to the other end, they start in the beginning again, and they start all over again. So imagine if you can paint that bridge every 5 years, right? That's possible if you start adding graphene to the coatings. And the reason is this bridge, just like the ship below, it flexes as it in the bridge is the wind, of course. In the ship's case, it's the ocean bobbing up and down. You get micro cracks in the coating through which the salt water gets in, and that then gets to the metal and starts rusting again. So if you can make the coating stronger, it will last longer. You have a great value prop. This is a huge market. $25 billion a year of graphene can be consumed by the coatings industry to make stronger coatings. How are we doing time-wise, by the way? I've lost complete track here.
Yep.
2 more minutes. Okay, I have to go fast. The largest market is cement and concrete, $50 billion a year. You can make cement 35% stronger by adding 0.1% of concrete. So on the right, you can see a typical cubic meter of concrete has 350 kilograms of cement. You can replace a third of that, so 100 kilograms, with a little jar of 250 grams of graphene. And that can be done very economically if you can sell your graphene for $40 a kilogram. That's a huge market. So we can do this because we've built a strong team. So here's my management team. 3 of us have over 60 years of experience in the chemical industry from companies like Shell, Monsanto, ExxonMobil, DuPont, and Dow. Guy is here, right in the table there. So if you want to talk to us, he's our CFO. He's here. We have 22 people. We have 2 locations, one in Houston, one in Burlington, Ontario. And we've been recipients of $16 million in grants, government grants so far, in 3 years of our short life. We're building a demonstration center in Burlington, Ontario, and that center will produce 1 metric ton of graphene per day, which will fuel a lot of the markets that I just showed you. That is slated to be completed by Q3 next year. And I show you a schematic here of what it looks like. Because we're using such high voltages and face these high temperatures, we automate this with robots and just to have safety. So in addition, we're starting to plan the first commercial plants, which will be 15 times this size, so 15 metric tons a day. And that's being done by partners. I've shown you 2 names there that have been in the press, Suncor and ChemQuest, who are partners for bitumen and for coatings. And this plant will use the carbon from turquoise hydrogen to make the graphene. So funding-wise, we've invested 41 million Canadian, so about 30 million US to date. Half of that from grants, the other half from strategic investors. We're looking to raise an additional 15 million to complement our pipeline of grants. We have another 30 million, 25 million US roughly in grants in the pipeline that we hope to capture in the next year and a half. And that's basically it. I think I finished on time.
Fantastic.
Almost.
Right. Thank you very much. I was going to ask John, in talking to Ariel Malik in Israel, who's the venture investor that's helping develop the tour ecosystem, there's another company in formation that's being built right now that Ariel said they're going to license your technology for rare earths materials, battery recycling, soil remediation. So there's a licensing opportunity with the flash process.
Right.
Rare earths we heard about yesterday, right? Major issue,
Yeah.
right? When are we likely to see that kind of activity, licensing activity?
Yeah. So our research center in Houston is primarily focused on the process innovation, so scaling the process. And we've taken it up a factor of, I think, 30,000 at this point. We started with a little vial that we showed in that first picture I showed you with Dr. Tour. And we're now flashing, we can up to 12 kilograms per flash. And so that knowledge on how to do this on a large scale can be used by companies like the Rare Earth Element Reclamation Project.
So is it conceivable that the rare earth issue, there's major opportunity for your flash process to be licensed
Absolutely.
to produce abundant rare earths for the technology business and so forth?
So you would use coal fly ash or red mud, which is the byproduct of aluminum refining from bauxite. Whatever's left over from the bauxite is called red mud. It's very, very rich, like coal fly ash is in the rare earth elements. And using our flash process, you can extract those in a very economical way.
So as a former investor on Wall Street, I look at this company and I'm thinking, is it 50 billion market cap in the future? I don't want to put any pressure on you, but are there plans to come public down the road?
Yeah, my last company, Ecosynthetics, I took the same idea from a lab bench in a university all the way to a public company. We went public in 2011. We grew it very fast. We're the second fastest growing clean tech company behind Tesla, only behind Tesla. So that was pretty good for a material sciences company. And we're trying to do the same thing here, but bigger.
Okay, so if Universal Matter comes public, there are two other publicly traded companies, both are in Israel, that were spun out of the Tour scientific work at Rice. One is called Weebit Nano, which does next generation memory technology, and the other is called DOTS technology. Both are traded on the Australian exchange. Israel has a relationship with Australia. That's why they're traded on the Australian exchange. I would assume that you would be on the TSE and dual listed on the NASDAQ?
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Canada, like Australia, has a very good junior exchange because of mining. And so we went public on the TSX, the full-blown exchange. And we were going to cross-list, we being Ecosynthetics, on the NASDAQ. We didn't do that yet, but this company is going to be bigger and most likely will be NASDAQ. So.
Okay, we're going to save a few minutes for questions at the end. I'm going to bring up Shlomo now from Israel, speaking of Israel, to talk about this sufficiently advanced technology that nanorobotics is commercializing. Fabulous. Shlomo, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. And thank you very much for inviting nanorobotics to present in this fascinating and incredible conference. I promise not to speak not about TikTok and not about China conflict. I will speak, but rather to a wider subject, cancer disease. So let me see how it's worked. So in our world, we have many types of fast and powerful vehicles and machines. Today, I would like to speak on a very fast, very powerful, and very small molecule, the molecular nanomachine. It's a very small nanocars, and this invention won the Nobel Prize in 2016, and I will speak about it in a minute. We are using this nanomachine and well, to be a bit more specific, we're using the wheels of those nanomachines or nanocars as our drug. And what for? Our vision is to eliminate cancer using programmable light-activated nanomachines to precisely target and destroy cancer cells. Just about the company on a nutshell, we have proven proof of concept of the technology, which I will elaborate in a minute. We raised until now around $8.5 million. We're focusing on cancer, but there will be more applications to this technology, and we have 4 patent applications in process, and we are preparing to file more, and we have a great team around us. So let's talk about how we use the nanomachines, the tiny wheels, to kill cancer cells as our platform technology. We have an organic molecule built from 2 parts, a stator and a rotor. The molecule size is 1 nanometer, and just for us to understand what 1 nanometer means, 50,000 can fit across the diameter of 1 human hair. The fact that it's small molecule, the energy for activation cannot be stored inside the molecule, and it needs to be from outsource. The energy source, it's a light, and a visible light in this case. Shining light on this nanomachine, shining light of this nanomachine, the rotor begin to spin in a way of 3 million revolutions per second. Sorry for the demo, it's not spinning, but it should spin. That's the transfer between Windows and Mac.
This is the magic right here.
Yeah, so this is technology. So just for proportion, the most powerful engine of Formula One car race get only 20,000 revolutions per minute. Well, it's around 330 per second. We're talking about 2 to 3 million revolutions per second. Well, when I saw it, I thought it was science fiction. And this is demonstrating how the molecule looks like. There is a stator and a rotor. Well, this should be a demo as well. And they connected with a double bone. And when we shine light on this double bone, we create a phenomena called autoisomeration. That means the unidirectional rotation of up to 3 million revolutions per second. This invention won the Nobel Prize in 2016. So what they done, basically, they able to build the tiny machines that mimic the movement of molecules in our body, like big protein on DNA or on ribosomes in our cells. Professor James Stewart took this technology, this molecule, and made it much more potent and specific to the cell membrane phospholipid layer. Incubation of nanomachines with cell membrane and shining light caused the rotor to become a driller, and those 3 million rotations per second extract a very powerful force that penetrate the cell membrane all the way to the nucleus of the cell and make it die in 5 minutes via necrosis. This was published in Nature by Professor Tu in 2017.
No side effects. No side effects.
No, well, no side effect now. I will speak about it. So since this molecule binds to the phospholipid layer, we have here a platform that can kill cells, any cell, bacteria, and fungus. All of them have a phospholipid layer. So what are we? We bring a next generation platform technology. It's a new approach of killing cells that we're bringing to the world, not by biological or any chemical mechanism. We use mechanical drilling. We are the only solution with on and off switch, using light to activate the nanomachine. Where there's no light, it's not being activated. That's how we can control in this stage the activity of this molecule, and potentially we can target any type of cell. But we will use only whenever we can bring light to. And we do not believe that the cell can develop any resistance to this kind of modality. So let's talk a bit about science. If there's any chemistry, biology, pharma persons in the audience? Oh, I thought so. Okay, so I will speak a bit about science, not too much. So for our proof of concept, we chose the very powerful aggressive melanoma model named B16F10. And we perform it with a special vendor in Israel. What we're doing, we inject those cells to the back of the mice, and they grew. That's how we can measure the volume of the tumor, and for us, we can bring light specific to the tumor area. What we can see here in the y-axis, we can see the tumor volume, tumor size, and in the x-axis, the time, the duration of the study. When we compare the control groups, the treatment with nanorobotics, with nanomachines, inhibits the tumor's growth in a dose-dependent manner. And animals survived all study duration up to 100 days. Then we just stop the study, otherwise those mice will become rats. Next, we check the toxicity effect of those machines. We inject the animals in the vein, or in the bladder, or in the dermal, and we couldn't identify any local toxicity or systemic safety effects. And last, we perform a pharmacokinetic study. What we're doing there, we're measuring the concentration of the molecule in the blood after it's been administered. And what we found, that the molecule have a fast clearance from the bloodstream of the animal, and it's get there in very low concentration, in spite of the fact that we inject a lot of molecules to the administration sites. And it's another evidence for its safety. Then we tried another direction. As maybe you all know or not, but the holy grail of medical world today is using immunotherapy to block immune checkpoints. Cancer cells develop resistance to immune system and block our immune system from recognize them and attack them. By using immune checkpoints inhibitors, the cancer cells exposed to the attack of the immune cell. So in this study, what we did, we took the most common immune checkpoint inhibitor called anti-PD-1 that widely used in clinic and treat people all over the world now. And we're able to show that if we treat with anti-PD-1 or nanomachine by itself, we're able to inhibit the tumor growth. But when we treat those animals with both, with the nanomachine and the anti-PD-1, we got a synergistic effect. So combination therapy is the main strategy today of the big pharma, especially if it's a combined immune checkpoints inhibitor. So we have here a very promising data for the future. Usually, a drug development animal study predict 30 to 40% of the success in clinical trial. But in our case, following the fact that we are not interfering with the natural chemical or biological mechanism of the body, in the body or in the cell, we believe that we highly predict what will happen within the human body. And this will highly reduce the risk. From molecular side, this year we partnered with Sterling Pharma. It's a very big pharmaceutical pharma, FDA approved one, with headquarters in North Carolina and United Kingdom. And we made significant progress. We shortened the process of synthesis of this molecule from 12 steps to 5 steps. That's a huge advantage for commercial side. We're able to synthesize the molecule in very high purity, 99.2%, and we found that the molecule is stable in various temperatures. Just for us to understand, the process is a low-cost manufacturing process, a small molecule. Small molecule is like Advil is a small molecule, antibiotic is a small molecule. So it's mean more efficient and more faster to market. To summarize the main advantage of our nanomachines, we effectively destroyed any type of cancer cells. Well, we didn't check all of them, it's huge banks, but we theoretically should be doing the same because it's not depends on anything that on the cells or in the cells. We do not see any cancer cells that can develop resistance to this type of mechanism of action. It's like sending millions of knives to the cell membrane and kill it. And taking into consideration that it's a local treatment and not a systemic one, we don't predict any systemic side effect and minimal colorectal damage. That is one of the main problem today of solution like, well, photodynamic therapy or chemotherapy, local chemotherapy. So to summarize the achievement that we made in 2022. So there was a question, a big question from a regulatory point of view. What those nano machines are, what they designated as. So if we go into the mode of action, that mechanical drilling, so maybe the FDA will designate them as a device. But from other point, we're talking about small molecule. In our language, it's called NC, new chemical entity. And mostly the FDA designate new NCEs as drug. So we didn't know what it is, and we talked with huge amount of specialists, ex-FDA, that 50% told us very convincingly that this is a device. And the other 50% told us very convincingly that it's a drug. And so we didn't know what to do. So what we did, we applied to the FDA, and there's a system in the FDA called device breakthrough designation. So when you apply, this is the first time that FDA saw these molecules as a process for a drug, for therapy. So all the jurisdiction and if the FDA talked between each other, CDER with CDRH and Office of Combination, and they came back to us after 40 days instead of 60 and said, well, your nano machine are drugs. Okay, now we know that we are drugs, we can know how to develop, what process to develop it. From pharmacokinetic, I show we found that it's fast clearance and low concentration in the blood, no problem of safety and toxicity, and we're able to repeat all this studied in vitro and vivo in efficacy results in independent specialists when vendor.
We're going to have to wrap up here, unfortunately. But is this the last slide?
No, but I can jump. I
told you we could be here all day.
You said 15 minutes. I'm much less than 15 minutes.
I'm getting Steve a message from Steve here. We've got to. Is that okay? All right.
Or whatever. I've 2-3 more minutes. Yeah, I will skip some small movie that I have answered. It will be 2-3 more minutes. So, first indication for proof of concept in clinical study, which is to go to non-melanoma skin cancer. It's dermatology using thinly phototherapy, so it will be easy for them to incorporate this type of therapy. It's topical administration, and we have some orphan indications there that will give us some fast truth with the FDA. It's a huge market, and I will skip this. In 2023, what we plan is to produce our product to clinical studies and to do a safety and toxicity in large animal for the FDA, and we plan to meet the FDA in this coming year for a pre-IND meeting to be aligned with them on the development program, and we believe that we will be in clinical trials in 2024. So, well, that's the team. John already talked about the Professor Jem Tours, our co-founder. Yossi Keret is our CEO, previously CEO of startup companies with extensive management and financial experience, and already lead 2 to 3 companies to IPO. And myself, I have a PhD in immunology and around 20 years experience in leading projects from early development to clinical trials and FDA, and met the FDA a few times in a face-to-face meeting. So this is our advisory board. since we don't have time, I will skip. And our future plans is first is to take this molecule and conjugate it with a leader, a small peptide or any GPS that we will able to inject it systemically, and it will go directly to the type of cancer that we want. And the second thing that we're doing these days is we're using here a visible light. The limitation of visible light is that it's penetrate few millimeters, but its limitation, but its advantage when we want to do something very, very delicate. Using near infrared, able to penetrate like more than 10 centimeters. So today in Professor James' 2 lab, there's new molecule that being developed, that been activated with near infrared, and that's our next celebration. And I will skip the movie because we don't have time. And so molecular nanomachines is from us is the future. And I'm confident that nanorobotics will be lead player in this fascinating field. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Just in talking to Yossi, unfortunately he had a health issue and he couldn't join us. But there are plans to take this company public as well. And the NASDAQ is very hospitable to these types of companies, as we know. John, you're on the board, right?
Yeah, well, John here is a CEO of its own company and in our board, and Guy as well is in our board as well. So
why it's a private company today and they're raising capital. We're likely to also see this company come public. So the tour ecosystem is going to be a rich source of publicly traded companies in the future, and it's very exciting. So thank you very much. We're going to open up. We've got 5 minutes for questions. These guys will be around. We're going to be networking later on today. So, yes.
Yeah, Shlomo, and all panelists, fantastic talks, extremely inspiring. I just wanted to ask Shlomo about the what seems to be so unique about this approach to attacking cancer, which is that the nanobots can attack the malignant cancer cells without damaging the surrounding healthy tissue. And I wonder if you could talk about both the issue of exactly how you do that, explain the specificity of targeting and the specificity of activation, and maybe also say a little bit about that depth of penetration issue you were talking about at the end.
Okay. So as I said, we have an on and off switch. The on and off switch is the light. So we can inject or we can put topically the cream or inject the molecule to the middle of the tumor. And then we can come with the light, a very specific light, not to cause any colorectal damage. And if the tumor, we think if the tumor will be a bit deeper than 2 millimeters, so we can treat it constitutively, like person will come one day, we can treat it, and will come again, and after 48 hours, and we'll go deeper and deeper, in a very gentle way. So it won't harm the patient, and it won't do any side effect.
My name is Forrest Dillon. I'm a civil engineer here in the Puget Sound. Do a lot of work with WSDOT and the Sound Transit. Sound Transit has a new facility they want to build, but it's on a Superfund site. They can't afford to take it out. Are you talking to the agencies in the cities with their big waste sites so you can?
I haven't got. Sorry.
Well,
I haven't gotten there yet, but yes, that would be of interest.
Well, I recommend just a blast out to the world this potential, because they can't afford to put it in the perfect site. Because to clean a Superfund site, they got to dig it out and haul it to another Superfund site. And so if they do it all right there, that would be huge. Second thing is Washington DOT is taking up miles of concrete pavement and replacing it. If they had that graphene, relatively soon, there's a $200 million job out on the street right now. So
beautiful.
Get these things to the market. It's just huge value. So DOT needs to know this is coming.
Yeah, no, we'll let them know. We have DOE
Thank you
funding
very much.
today.
Thanks for your comment.
So.
Very quickly, Mike Stevens, on graphene, does your process provide the type of graphene that could be used in the semiconductor industry, both for thermal and conductivity characteristics? And on Shlomo, how do you get rid of the molecule once it's in the bloodstream? Thank you.
Yeah, so you can use this graphene in those applications. We're currently not focused on it. I did have batteries on there. We're starting to do some work in batteries right now. There's some really interesting applications for graphene in batteries, but semiconductors would be another one. So
More licensing opportunities.
Regarding well, I'm not reading up, so the molecule is evacuated by itself by urine or feces, and it's have low stability period, so it won't be stable and will get apart and won't. No.
Okay, so time for 2 more questions. Thank you.
Howard Hayden, sometimes known as Cork. Good talks, one and all. Shlomo, I have a suggestion, and maybe you have thought of this, but imagine using your fancy dancy little molecule killer to clear out clogged arteries where you can follow right up there with a light source. Have you considered that?
No, it's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So lots of applications for these nanorobots.
Yeah, one last question.
Greg Meredith. I was wondering for the 2 waste conversion technologies. Back in the summer, our chain was approached by a group called Carbon Meta. And they also have a waste conversion, and they were quite interested in tokenizing the whole process, so that when people brought their waste in, they would receive a token. The token would be a fraction of a lot that would then, follow through the process. And when there was a conversion, they could either, get this the new substance or sell it on. And I was wondering if you had considered tokenization possibilities for your processes.
I have not yet, but it's an interesting idea. So
We're going to talk to George about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Just wanted to make one suggestion that we allow Shlomo to play his cool little video during the networking break for any that might want to see one picture worth 1,000.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Fantastic.
We can do that. And we are out of time for this panel. Great. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much.